Get again to a knee, and that's it. The clock will continue to go down from 20 seconds. So if Super Bowl 52 was framed as the Philly special, this has got to be Eagle voodoo here in New Orleans as they found the magic spell on the two-time defending champion Chiefs, stopping them with an incredible performance. The bench is empty, the teams converge, and this one is over. And the Eagles have beaten the Chiefs convincingly in Super Bowl 59, 40-22.
Kevin Harlan on the call, Westwood 1. You heard it right here on Sports Radio 610. Where to begin today, this glorious Monday following a Super Bowl massacre, Seth?
Do you hear the disrespect there, Sean? Do you hear the disrespect? He didn't even have anything prepared for if the Eagles won the game. He must have been hoping or just expecting a miraculous comeback by Mahomes at some point because I guess Eagles voodoo or something. I don't know.
C+.
I had all these three-peat gimmicks ready to go. I honestly, I wasn't really in the corner of either of these two teams until this past week. There's just so much talk about, a three-peat. Can you believe it? And you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of before USC played Texas in the national championship game. It was like a complete 2-3 weeks of people just debating whether or not USC was the greatest college team ever. Oh, my gosh. Can you just believe how incredible they are? It felt like that.
Yeah.
And it disgusted me. It sickened me. I think the Chiefs players bought into it. I think they just got deep-pantsed in front of a very large audience last night.
Yeah, I thought about that as it was 24-0 at the half in this game. And welcome in, everybody. I hope you had a great Super Bowl Sunday. Hope you had a great weekend. Good to be back in studio. Thank you. We'll talk plenty about the trip to New Orleans, I'm sure, today. But that's what I was thinking, Seth, as it was 24-0 at halftime. A lot of casuals watching the Super Bowl. You know, it's a lot of people dipping into the NFL for one of the few times they watch, maybe the only time they watch. And I'm thinking that maybe those people are watching the Super Bowl hoping for some sort of episodic drama back and forth, a game for the ages, that kind of thing. I think for people in our business, outside of the Kansas City Chiefs radius there, the ones that aren't either rooting for or covering the Chiefs or both, that last night was a joy for many of us. The Chiefs had started to take on the persona of the New England Patriots through all those years, where they felt it was a fait accompli, they were going to win the Super Bowl, and they felt that the people covering the team and rooting for the team almost acted as if they were part of the team, that they were the good players.
Right, and the honor.
Yeah.
Don't you peasants understand how great this team is?
Yeah, and so the way I looked at it, with all due respect to Nate Burleson, who preached to us that we should be wanting to watch greatness. We did watch greatness last night. The Eagles were phenomenally great in last night's game, and there is something joyous to me about watching a cocky team, a cocky entity, I'll call it here, the 53-headed monster of the Chiefs, plus the coaches, plus much of the fan base and the media. Bob Fesco, the morning host, who's licking his wounds right now, and I love Bob, but sat down in our exclusive furniture hot seat and just bragged for 15 minutes as if he were under center playing quarterback. There is something joyous to me, and I'm curious how the people feel, 713-572-4610. There's something joyous to me about 4 hours spent watching that team get its teeth kicked in.
I'll tell you what, I know Brady never would have done this, but at the very least, I was hoping he would bring up something about how when he lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl, those Giants teams did a really good job with a four-man pass rush.
Yeah.
If I recall properly, the first game, it was even more of a big difference. Spagnuolo was the defensive coordinator for that team. All the defensive wizardry it kind of falls apart when you're going against really good teams because at some point you just got to line up and play. Mm-hmm. And my one thought the entire evening was, man, the Eagles are just physically tougher and more talented and more disciplined than the Chiefs are.
Yeah.
But in those games where Brady fell victim in second pass rush, you know what he did? He made a game of it.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have the worst game of his career either time.
Yeah.
He actually competed, as opposed to Pat Mahomes, who fell apart. And it was, he's still a great quarterback and all that. But I don't think it's an over-dramatization to say that, all right, this was emphatic proof that I don't think you have to worry about the Chiefs reigning over the league for the next 10 years just because Pat Mahomes is only 29 years old.
Yeah.
They were not a great dominating team in the regular season.
Correct.
The credit to them for being veteran and savvy and winning as many games as they did in the fourth quarter. That's really hard to do. It wasn't just dumb luck that they won all those fourth quarter games and one-score games. But they couldn't line up and play against that football team last night.
No.
The Eagles were just a flat-out better and more dominant football team. Mm-hmm. It was really fun to watch. It felt like the Super Bowls of our youth when it wasn't much of a game.
Remember that? The 80s.
Yeah, like every year the Super Bowl generally sucked.
It was a blowout for like 6 or 7, not all those years, but yeah, from the Bears destroying the Patriots through like the end of the decade. That's what that was like last night. It was 40-6 at one point. Well, I'm sure we'll get into discussions at some point today, tomorrow, whatever, about what you just alluded to. Like, okay, where does this put the Chiefs as far as dynasties go if we're making comparisons and whatnot? And I think it is noteworthy that the Chiefs are 3-2 now in Super Bowls, but their point differential is like -30. Like in the 2 games they've lost in the Super Bowl, the Patriots went 6-3 in the Super Bowl during the Brady era there. They lost in the waning moments on a helmet catch. They lost in another close game. And then they lost to Nick Foles and the Eagles when Brady threw for 500 yards in that game.
It was a really high-scoring game.
I
think any of the GOAT conversations or anything, I feel like Brady...
Backburnered, man.
There was so much just extending the line on the graph upwards for Pat Mahomes and laying out this red carpet to where obviously he's going to be the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily going to be all that easy. They've got more tough free agency decisions to make this year. They've got really good players who are free agents. One of them, the right guard, Trey Smith, who would look good in a Texans uniform. And it's just not so simple. Mahomes the last 2 years in the regular season has been very good in the playoffs, on average, till last night.
Right.
But they haven't been as dominant in offense.
He looked like, to me, when that game was really starting to slip out of control for the Chiefs, there was a sequence. The sequence, I thought, where the Chiefs got the ball down 10-0, so it's still a game at that point. Even Nick Wright had tweeted at that point, like, all right, they're down 10-0. This is where the game begins in the Super Bowl for the Chiefs. Because
every Super Bowl they've won, they've been down by 10 points.
That's been their MO, right. So they were down 10-0, the point where the game, quote unquote, begins for the Chiefs. Eagles went sack. Yeah. Chiefs so now they're down 17-0. Chiefs get the ball back. TFL on the first play, short run on the second play, and then another sack on third down. It was 3 and out, and then it was, and then by halftime it's 24-0. The Chiefs turn the ball over on downs. Eagles take the shot to Devontae Smith. No, I'm sorry. Mahomes threw the next pick. He threw a pick right before the half.
Yeah.
The turnover on downs is in the second. Anyways, so it's 24-0, and Mahomes has made 2 cataclysmic mistakes in this game, and he's been running for his life. And Seth, what it reminded me of, Mahomes looked like C.J. Stroud did during that stretch in the middle of the season where he just couldn't escape pressure. There was pressure on over half the plays. And Mahomes, they did a great job of keeping him in the pocket and making sure he didn't sneak out. That's how you get those sacks. Mahomes isn't getting all those little tippy-toe runs that he gets for about 20 or 25 yards, whatever it is. Now, I'm watching this. I'm like, man, I've seen this movie before. A very capable quarterback who's just being snowed under because his offensive line is completely overwhelmed right now.
Yeah, and that offensive line that's banged up and it just hasn't been a strength of their team all year. They were having to contend with Jalen Curtis, the defensive tackle for the Eagles. So those guys on the edges, they had one-on-ones, and they were able to tee off. Mm-hmm. And Joe Thuney, who's been playing out of position throughout the playoffs, you could just tell they've figured everything out about him.
Yeah.
He looked like a guy that is a guard for a reason.
Yeah, I thought Jalen Hurts ends up winning the MVP, by the way, and he was outstanding. He was great. He was in control the entire time. Down on a push. He got a touchdown in the short red zone. He dropped one in the bucket to Devontae Smith. Like he was showing that he was throwing to the entire route tree. I thought he was great. I thought Josh Sweat could have made a run at MVP just based on how crucial he was to that sequence in the second quarter. You know, those sacks I was talking about, he had 1.5 of those. He got pressure on the second interception, the one that gave the Eagles the short field that they turned into the 24-0 lead. Like, he shoved Tooney back into Mahomes on the pick to Zach Bond. I thought Josh, it's really hard to give it to one guy on that front because Williams had 2 sacks. You pointed out Jalen Carter was really good.
Well, and the Chiefs' defense in the first half was playing really well. They had allowed 10 points. It's just that Mahomes had coughed up 7. And the dam broke in the second half. They couldn't keep it up.
Yeah.
The whole thing, I get annoyed sometimes with the way they talk about, Jalen Hurts hasn't been pressured at all. They use that based on the actual pass attempts. No, he was pressured and he ran really well. It's hard to account for a quarterback that squats twice his own body weight. You know, like he's such a freakishly different type of quarterback because it's not just that he can run, it's that he's so freaking powerful. And one thing I appreciated about Jalen Hurts, Sean, for a big, strong, physical quarterback, he slides the way the slide rule is intended to be used. Yeah. He just goes down and he protects himself.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry. I know even the Chiefs defenders link around the sideline. So the Chiefs defenders, when they saw that Hurts was about to run out of bounds, they respected him for it.
Yeah.
Because he's not dinking and exploiting a rule that's meant to protect quarterbacks.
That's right.
The way Pat Mahomes does.
Yep. We got a lot to get into with this Super Bowl, man. 40-22, the final score. The Eagles just destroy it. 40-22, and the game was not as close as the final score would indicate. The Chiefs had 275 yards of offense. I feel like they got 100 of it after it was 40-6. Those were completely worthless and meaningless. Yeah, it was complete destruction.
It's something to build on for the future for Xavier Worthy and
right. They're going to take that into next year. Fuel.
Yeah.